to Podcasting 101 with me, your host, Rachel. This podcast is for female business owners and solopreneurs that are looking to start a podcast that adds to your own already awesome offering. I'll give you helpful advice that you can take away and use in your podcasting journey. I hope to answer those tricky questions that just keep you from starting. Once a month, I'll be joined by other female podcasters. They'll share their journey with you and offer tips and advice they discovered along the way. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. So I've been podcasting for about 18 months now, and I just wanted to share 5 things that I wish I knew more about and that I didn't know when I started. So first one, no one cares what you sound like. Now, lots of people have trouble with this, and I worried a lot about this when I first started. I worried that my voice didn't sound right, that it didn't sound the same in my head as it did when I listened to the recording. Did I sound professional enough? I kind of had it in my head that everything had to be perfect, and that's always a problem, isn't it? Perfectionism. So I also felt like I needed to sound like a proper quote unquote broadcaster, like BBC radio and sound, have that kind of quality. I mean, this kind of leads into my second point about not needing really expensive equipment to start your podcast. I know it's really important for the sound quality to be good. Nobody wants to listen to a half an hour podcast with somebody who you can't really hear what they're saying. There's loads of background noise, there's loads of banging. You know, if it makes it really difficult to hear what you have to say, that's not really good. But let's be honest, it doesn't need to be perfect before we start. And I've said this before, you don't need expensive equipment. I didn't go out and buy loads of stuff. I was in the privileged position that my husband is a sound engineer and has been for many years, and he does have quite a lot of equipment. So I was lucky enough that he had some mics for me to use. I have kind of upgraded them since then. I love my Behringer Bigfoot mic that I'm using now. I think it sounds really good. But what I had to begin with was good enough. And doing the simple things like, making sure you've closed all the windows, making sure, you're in a place where you aren't going to be disturbed. All those kind of things can make a lot of difference. I then tried to move away from what I sounded like, or if you're doing a video podcast as well, what you look like, whether you're turning up full face of makeup, as you can see today, not for those of you that are listening to this on audio, but those of you watching on YouTube. I'm not wearing any makeup today. I've just got my hoodie on, and I think that what I'm wearing has no bearing on the knowledge that I want to share with everybody today, and that kind of thing can stop you from showing up on video in general. So I'm kind of a big believer of showing up as you are and as how I am most days, and this is how I am most days. I just try to focus on how I can make my episodes better in terms of their content. Obviously my delivery, I have got easier talking to the microphone and talking to the camera since I've started doing this in the last 18 months, but also making sure that my content is relevant and kind of going back to that point of what would my audience want to listen to, what problem am I solving for them to help them with their transformation with your podcast. Not there, you listening out there. So the third thing was, there are other people that have a podcast like mine. So when I first started my virtual assistant one, I was like, how can I make a virtual assistant podcast and a podcast aimed at virtual assistants that's not like any other podcast that I've listened to? Or when I connected with Rosemary Calendar, who is also a podcast manager and a podcast host. I really, really love Rosemary, and I love what she's doing with her podcast and her business. So when she started her Too Busy to Podcast, I was worried that if I started my own podcast about podcasting, that it would look like I'm either copying her or trying to do the same thing, and I was really worried. I didn't want to be that person. But then I then kind of got over myself in the way that there are plenty of other podcasts out there doing similar things to what I'm doing now and what Rosemary's doing. But the thing that makes it different is the fact that it's you that's doing it. You are showing up as you, and your vibe and your authenticity appeals to a different audience in a specific way to other people's podcasts. So, somebody who enjoys my podcast, they just might, it's not saying they don't like other people's podcasts, but it just makes, you're just being you. And that is what is the most important thing to come across in your podcast. I'm talking about podcasting in the way that I would deal with it, and everyone else is talking about it in the way that they would do it. So my biggest piece of advice here is just to be you. I know that's easier said than done, because it is hard showing up authentically and having that big imposter syndrome, like I mentioned before, thinking about your voice and what do I look like, and am I going to say something, has what I got to say important enough for people to listen to? But those are things that to try and get over, and just start talking and planning and doing those kind of things, and just always keeping your ideal listener in mind so that you're staying on track. So number 4 is being nervous about interviewing guests. The thing I would tell myself, or tell you, is that you get better. You get better each time you do it. If you don't practice, you won't get better. If you don't start, you won't get better. It is nerve-wracking, and I was quite nervous when I first started interviewing guests, but that was what I wanted to do for my podcast. That is what I decided to do. So in the end, you just dive in and you just start. And that is the best thing that you can do, is to just start. You won't get any better if you don't start. There are some things that you could do. If you're really nervous about interviewing people, then you could rope in your friends, your family, a business bestie, do some mock interviews, record them and watch them back, and kind of have a little bit of a learning exercise from those. I used to clear half an hour before my interviews. I still do that now before I do an interview, just so I can get in the right kind of a headspace. I could have a coffee, have a quiet moment. You don't want to be rushing around doing work right up until the hilt and then you're not prepared. You want to be able to just log on a little bit earlier in whatever software you're using, or however you're doing it, however you're recording, so that you can get your mic set up and you're all ready for them to arrive. So those kind of things can help with your nerves. And I still do that kind of, have that half an hour downtime now. But I think the most important thing is to just start, because you will get better once you start. And it becomes less of a big thing, less nervous the more times you do it. I do get a little bit of a nervous anticipation. And sometimes if you're having just one of those days, I've got to psych myself up a little bit. But once I get into the swing of it, once I've got into talking to my guest, you kind of get not sucked in, not in a bad way, into the conversation, and you kind of forget that you were nervous or forget that you were worried about it. Oh, and also I would say don't treat it like an interview, quote unquote. Obviously, if you can't see me, you're not watching on YouTube, but an interview, because that's how I kind of thought about it, when actually it's more of a chat, something that's a bit more laid back. You're not like an investigative journalist if that's your podcast, then yes, you would have to have those types of interview skills, that you're, that type of interviewing that you're doing. But I would say on a general term, like what I'm doing and what I'm seeing a lot of my clients and other people out there in the space doing, is you're more having a chat with somebody, with your peers, with someone that's got something to offer for your audience. It's not like a big interview kind of thing. And the last one, number 5, is I kind of knew it was a big commitment, but I possibly didn't realise how much until I was really in the thick of it. For me, I absolutely love podcasting. That's kind of what I live and breathe at the moment. And once I kind of caught the bug, I wanted to carry on podcasting, because I just love the whole process. I love recording the episodes. I love interviewing them. I love helping my clients get their awesome podcasts out there and increase their business and their audience. I really enjoy all of that. But if you don't enjoy it, it'll become a chore like anything else that you don't like doing. Obviously, if you can afford to, and it's good for you and your business, you can outsource some of the things, which can help with the commitment side of things and the time. And, because it's not just recording the episode and bang, you've got it. Because even if you don't want to edit, you want to keep it as raw as possible, you've still got to upload it. You still want to make the most out of that piece of content you've created for your social media and your marketing strategy. You don't want to just leave it as the one podcast. You've got to be able to promote it. Pull out things from the episode that are going to be really valuable to your audience to let them know, all those kind of things. So that there are a lot of moving pieces with the podcast. So one thing, I think it was Janet Murray that said to me, which I hadn't thought about before, so I learned a lot from Janet. It was such a great conversation. If you haven't listened to the episode, I'd really recommend you go back and listen to Janet's episode. I'll link it in the show notes to make it easy. But is to do a season or a series. There can be as many episodes as you like. You could even do just a series of 4 episodes. You've got 4 very specific themes or topics from your business, from what you want to talk about, and you can really get to know whether you enjoy podcasting, whether you're doing guest or solo, however you're doing your episodes. You'll get like the feel of the whole process of recording, talking to guests if you have a guest on, uploading, the promotion side of things, all of that. You'll get a really good idea how long it's going to take you as well, and see whether or not this is going to be viable for your business. Can I carry this on? Or if I'm going to outsource it, can I afford to outsource it? What is reasonable? Can I outsource some of it? All those kind of things. And it will really give you a really great idea into whether or not podcasting is going to be great for you and your business. I hope you've got some value out of me sharing my learns. If you're in the same position, if you're just starting out in your podcast and this is how you're feeling, or you're in the middle of your podcast and you're not sure whether you want to carry on, I'd love to chat. I'm always happy to chat to anybody about their podcast or their journey. I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can book straight into my calendar and we can get a chat in. Just let me know. And also, if you have any questions, also let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Great. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, share and subscribe. Your support means so much to me. If there's a question or topic you'd like covering, then I'd love to hear from you. Find the podcast on Instagram @RachelBotfield and drop me a DM. Till next time. Bye.